What's up, Doc? Welcome to the Docs Get Money podcast. Are you a badass doctor killing it professionally and has bigger dreams than just clocking in and out of the hospital? Do you want to leave behind a legacy that is as lit as an HBCU homecoming? Want to know how other doctors are getting to the big bag? That's right, making 5, 6, and 7 figures without putting on the white coat? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Kimberly, but you can call me Kim or KB. I went from being a burnt out and overwhelmed emergency physician to the founder and CEO of 2 6-figure non-clinical companies and beating burnout along the way. I'm also your business coach, here to help you make money moves to change the world. This podcast isn't just about making money, though. It's about leveling up your life, mindset, and bank account so you can build an empire that's as iconic as Beyonce. You ready? Let's get into it. Hey, Doc. Burned out? Ready to just burn the whole hospital down? Well, let's start a fire. Okay, no, not in the hospital, but in your bank account. And from Side Hustler to CEO, my signature one-on-one business coaching program, you'll transform your burnout into a fire and start your own profitable coaching, consulting, or midterm rental business and make clinical cash in 90 days or less. That's right, 4 or 5 figures in 90 days or less. This is only for doctors who are done being overworked and undervalued and need a way out of the hospital now. With your fire offer, you're not just dreaming about escaping clinical practice, you're building your own emergency exit. In 90 days, you could be your own boss, making bank, and actually enjoying your life again. So are you ready to swap those singed scrubs for CEO status? Then hit me up at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram with the word burn, and let's turn that burnout into the bag. Awesome. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Docs Get Money's podcast. I am so excited to have Dr. Katrina Gipson with me today. Now, before we got on, we were just talking to each other. We've known each other like in passing. We're in like the group me. Of course, we're both ER doctors, but this is like the actual first time we've sat down and talked to each other. But with Black women, it's always like you sitting down and talking to a friend, to a homegirl. So Dr. Katrina Gipson, please introduce yourself to the Docs Get Money audience, if you would.
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's true. We've been like virtual sisters and colleagues all this time. So this is just an additional opportunity for us to get to know each other. And also, thank you for giving me your platform to share a little bit about myself with your guests. So I am a board certified emergency medicine physician. Yay, right? And I like to I'm describing myself as, an emerging health equity thought leader in the field. I am an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Emory in Atlanta, and I practice clinically at Grady Memorial Hospital. It's one of the busiest emergency departments in the country, and we really focus on, vulnerable populations, the underinsured and the uninsured. And for many of us, regardless of our specialty, when you're practicing here, that is our calling. In addition to, practicing medicine, I've really tried to focus and hone my career in and focus it through the lens of DEI, right? And of course, that's one of the things that we are feeling in our specialties every day is under attack. But I think that it's important to, regardless of what it is you do, whether it's medicine, law, teaching, advocating, is I always try to ask myself, for whom shall I work and sacrifice? Because your job titles, they're going to shift, throughout your career, but sometimes you just always need to kind of step back, and it's like, for whom shall I serve? And, also prioritize yourself. And for me, that journey has really, in addition through that lens of focus of DEI, I have found my voice through academia and organized medicine. I know that's something that's near and dear, to your heart as well. And it's been an excellent, tool for me to kind of do the things that I am passionate about. And I know we were talking about this before we started recording as well. Most recently, one of the ways that I'm trying to pivot is just by using my voice and writing for the purposes of advocating for our patients, our specialty, and for minoritized populations, for those who are underrepresented in medicine, and of course for Black women. So, it's so funny. You never know what that journey is going to look like, and particularly for those of us Type A folks who went to professional school, you go to medical school, you go to residency, and then you get your job, and that's supposed to be it. But, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We are blessed that we're in a specialty that is, there's altruism involved, there's intrinsic value into what it is that we do. But it's just kind of like, well, what else? Maybe your calling is more than taking care of patients at the bedside. And I've always known that that was the case for me. And I wasn't quite sure what that was going to look like. But I'd say I kind of found my footing through writing op-eds. It's an excellent way for us to empower ourselves specifically. I did that through the Public Voices Fellowship of Academy Health in partnership with the op-ed project. I strongly encourage your listeners to take a look at their website if you think that writing is a way for you to advocate for whomever it is that you feel like is the voiceless community that you care about. And it's an excellent way to, get your ideas out there, your thoughts out there. There's a lot of misinformation, as we all know, as it pertains, to medicine. And I think that I started this program back in December of 2022. We were, nose deep in the pandemic, which is still a very real thing. I know we're not hearing about it as much. We're not talking about it as much, but it definitely has, inequitably impacted certain communities. And this was an opportunity for me to use my voice about COVID-19, police violence, all these things. And this writing started to, kind of open up other doors and opportunities for me. But of greatest importance, I feel like I took off my blinders. My only way to write wasn't just to, write a scientific peer-reviewed research journal, which is, of course, important. That dictates how we take care of our patients, produces evidence-based medicine. But it's a very narrow audience that those types of publications reach. And I think it's important that we kind of take a step back and make sure that our work is accessible. And one of the best ways to do that is just through writing and publishing in non-peer-reviewed journals. And that just gave me the opportunity to meet amazing people speaking on panels. Getting to talk to Dr. Kimberly Brown here is also one of those opportunities, and just really network with like-minded people whose greater goal is health equity, and just really examining the social drivers of health, how pop culture, how everything it is that we consume, impacts and drives these healthcare inequities. And from my writing, a friend of mine, Jimmy Pruitt and his Farm So Hard network, we've been talking at a conference, and he's like, we really got to get this podcast started. And that is what we have done. So my newest baby is my podcast, which is available on all platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. It's called Culture Shock Therapy, Your Health Equity Prescription, and it's just really a way to educate listeners about how policy, pop culture, and the social drivers of health really impact health inequities. And then in addition to, gearing people towards, sources that are accurate, ways to educate themselves about these issues, I think of greatest importance, you have to empower ourselves. It's so easily you're just bombarded with these awful statistics, and you feel overwhelmed and like there's nothing that you can do. So I try to meet everybody where they are and empower them with a resource to change the current situation or to advocate on behalf of an issue of interest. So that's we've already released our first 4 episodes so far, so we're really proud of that. Hopefully, getting better and better. So I really think that that's a way to engage our listeners, to empower our listeners, and to educate folks. You can also learn more about my work, my writing on my website, Katrina Gipson, Katrina like the hurricane, GIP as in Peter, SON.com. Take a look at some of my writing, if you want to reach out for speaking engagements and learn more about the podcast, that's kind of like our home base.
I love it, girl. Katrina like a hurricane. Like that is just
That is the best way to tell somebody how to spell your name. You are absolutely incredible. Now, she just gave you guys in a very small nutshell about everything that she's got going on. So let me just go a little bit deeper. So, like I said, I feel like we know each other, but we don't know each other. So right. I know what I've read about you. And of course I've heard you speak a little bit as well too, but go back a little bit. Just give me about like where you're from. Tell me about your family life growing up, and why did you even decide to get into medicine? Like, how did you even decide to become a doctor? I'd love to know that.
I ask myself, don't we ask ourselves that almost daily now? Sometimes when the alarm clock goes off, it's like, why am I doing this? So that's why you always have to make sure that you have your why. But of course, so I was born and raised in Ann Arbor, Michigan, go blue. And it was a very
Midwest girl.
Yes, exactly. Midwest born and raised. And it was for those of you who are not like familiar with Ann Arbor, Michigan, I just want to talk a little bit about the demographics of the place, the culture of the place, and what that means for me growing up as a young black girl, eventually becoming a black woman. I feel like it was maybe like at the time 10% black, so it was enough where there was we were very clearly a minoritized community, but also there was enough for us to have community. And I was very blessed to have two parents who instilled in me the importance of education, and also a very strong sense of black pride, and that was just honed in the black church. I was born and raised in an AME church, a progressive AME church, and it really so I had plenty aunties and uncles and folks who really poured into us in a community. We also were raised in and Jack and Jill and all that sort of stuff. So for us, it was like a very important way to like have these small, like safe spaces that I may not, have in school, because there were definitely times like in elementary school, middle school, you were the only black kid in your class. And, we didn't have terms like imposter syndrome then, but like we definitely got those lectures every year that it's like, you have to work, twice as hard to receive half as much, or people are going to make assumptions about you based upon your physical appearance, or where to sit in the class to show that you are engaged. And that meant a lot to me. And I know that was not the experience that a lot of folks who look like us have. So I was like very, very fortunate, to have those experiences where people acknowledge that, yes, you are going to be treated differently because of how you appear. You are going to have different experiences. We're not playing this colorblind game. And,
right.
So that my identity, the intersectionality of all of my identities, but most predominantly me being a black female, really shaped who I am. And I was very, like I said, blessed and fortunate to have family who invested in, my growth, my education, and really just making sure that I knew who I was and whose I was, because people are going to test you, and the world is not always a soft place for folks like us. So I knew that I had, my church community, my Jack and Jill community, my parents are Greek. So it just was really like, I really, the older I got, understand how important that was to us. So, I went to Yale for undergrad, which, and folks were like, "Oh my God, there are black people." Yeah, yes, there are, and I think it was
yes, they are. I know several of them that went there.
We do exist, and also I think very similar to finding like that safe place to land. Growing up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, I very much had that. At Yale too, there was a strong black culture, and specifically for me, when I use black, I just mean the vague term of folks who are descendants of the diaspora. So specifically, I'm black, African American, the descendants of the enslaved, individuals whose blood, sweat, and tears built the wealth of the nation, the world's most powerful nation. So but when I got to Yale, that community included like, Afro-Caribbeans, for immigrants from West Africa. We all just kind of like came together and found a sense of community. And, I can distinctly remember, maybe I was like a sophomore or something. It was like this huge deal of like all these black professors on campus who were being denied like tenure, and the statistics were terrible. And I was like, me being me, I was like, it sounds awful. I need to like get in on this, right? So, but I just distinctly remember that my entire education was just really focused on, advocacy, resistance, and I also realized that I was blessed to have had the opportunities and experiences to get me here, because I truly am a product of, my village, my praying, grandparents, may they all rest in peace, my praying, parents, and just the love of our community. So I don't know why, girl, I decided I was going to be a biomedical engineer, because I'm like a masochist. It's just like, this is, anytime you hear that something is difficult, that this is not, or black people don't flourish here, they don't do this. So I was like,
that's what I'm going to do.
Right. Which I think is both a gift and a curse, because on one hand, I don't want to feel as if, we have to prove ourselves. And depending upon how you internalize that, it can be motivating, but it's also, it's weighty. You never want to feel like you're having to represent an entire people. But unfortunately, that's sometimes the position that we're put in. So that was that is the path that I chose, and I was like, well, maybe I'm going to go to law school, maybe I'm going to be a banker. And then towards the end, I was just like, okay, I guess I really am going to go into medical school. So after that, shot down to Philly for a couple years. I just finished up my pre-med requirements, and I ended up going to Case Western for medical school.
Nice.
Once again, and that's in Cleveland, Ohio. And once again, like that SNMA community. We were, I was a member of the David Satcher Society. So we just had people that, told us, you belong here. Your experience, you are valid. Your experiences and your lived experiences are valid, and your voices need to be heard. Now, of course, I'm not going to sugarcoat the experience. I definitely had some dark days, and when I'm actually at ACEP now, so I'm talking with like some of my med school friends. We did have some dark days, and we did have, some negative experiences on the ward, whether it was with patients or with our peers, or even, the attending physicians who are supposed to be teaching us. People made, I can think about so many little microaggressions and experiences that I had. And I think to a certain point, we compartmentalize or minimize, not because of not to take away from the gravity, but just for the purposes of persevering, for self-preservation,
Right.
just like little things. For instance, I can remember I was on the off service, as an emergency medicine resident. As many of you know, we spend a lot of time outside of the emergency department. We are jacks of all trades, master of one, so they say. And I was chatting, with one of the gyne residents. Is like, where'd you go to medical school? I said here, and literally made the gesture, pointed down to the ground that we are standing on. But he just like could not understand that someone who looked like me, despite my talent or skills, that I went to Case Western Reserve. I had to have gone to wherever else he thinks that people who look like me went to. So I just looked at him and I said, so to where else could I be referring when I literally am pointing to the ground that we are standing on? And you will never find anybody who is more offended than someone who has been held accountable for a microaggression that they have committed against you, girl. I think we all know this, right? It's like, oh my God. It's all about, your tone and how you said it and why you said it and where you said it. And that really, I think, resonated for me with my current situation now. But so yeah, I was there for medical school as well as a residency. That's probably, I think, the longest place that I have spent as an adult. So I did my 8-year bid in Cleveland before coming to our nation's capital. I was at GW, George Washington University, for my health policy fellowship, and I had a lot of amazing experiences there. I was able to be a health policy fellowship or a health policy fellow for Senator Richard Blumenthal as a Democrat Democrat out of Connecticut. I also worked at a think tank, the Commonwealth Fund, which they do great work. They are a nonpartisan think tank that just puts out a lot of important non-biased information that impacts the types of policies that impact how we live our lives, how we practice medicine, and how patients, and when I say patients, I'm referring to myself as well, because we're all going to be a patient at some point in our lives. And I think it's important to realize that, while I was in residency, I also had the opportunity to spend some time on the Hill with Representative Raul Ruiz, who's also an emergency medicine physician. And he's a Democrat out of California. So I've kind of done all of these things. And it's so weird because I'm like, okay, I have an idea of what I want to do and what I want my life to look like, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get there. But for the first time, I found myself embracing that unknown and that discomfort because, if you want to go into health policy or advocacy or whatever that means, it's not that clear-cut path to you go to medical school, then you do your residency, then you do your fellowship. So I'm kind of like twiddling my thumbs there, and it's just like, well, I know I still want to practice medicine because for a number of reasons, I am passionate about patient care. But the other thing, and I'm sure you've noticed this as well in some of the work that you do, is the fact that we still, get up, put on our scrubs, and go into that hospital and take care of patients, and we see how these policies are actually enacted on the ground. That's what gives us our leg up when we are, talking to folks who, these people who are making these oppressive reproductive rights laws or banning IVF or, talking about, transgender care, all these types of things all these types of healthcare issues that are being politicized for other people's personal and, monetary gain. We see the real life effects. And I think that that's what gives us a leg up when we step into these other spaces, which are usually not inhabited by physicians, but very much should be. So I feel like if if you can't locate certain parts on a woman's body, then you shouldn't be legislating it. I'm just saying.
Come on, church.
But that's just really like what it is. And I would make the argument that a first-year medical student is going to be in a better position than your average politician to make certain decisions and policies about, how we practice medicine, how we receive, health care. So at some point I said, well, what can I do to still practice medicine while I'm kind of figuring things out, but make a difference? So I was fortunate enough to come down to Emory and start their health policy fellowship. My inaugural health policy fellow is in her second year, so that's really exciting. She's getting our social emergency medicine track together, and it's just one of those ways that I'm like, oh, I'm kind of starting to do some of the things that I really have said that I wanted to do. And I think that it may not look like what I thought it was going to be. And I'm also embracing the fact that who knows what I'll be doing in the next 2 to 5 years. However, one thing, but that's actually a good thing though. I feel like having everything strategically placed out is also a little bit anxiety provoking for me as well. Maybe that's weird, but I just embrace the unknown and just
can you say more about that? Yeah, no, I don't think that that's anxiety provoking at all. Mm-hmm. If I might interrupt you, because I feel as physicians, we have had our lives prescribed in so many different ways. Like everybody knows the formula to becoming a doctor. You go to undergrad, get your degree, then you go to take your MCAT, then you apply to medical school. You go to medical school for 4 years, and you go to residency plus or minus, fellowship, etc. And then out you pop as a doctor. But some people, I think, lean into that, especially if you're a type A individual, you need to just know the plan. But talk, I guess, a little bit more about what you're saying about the freedom and the flexibility to not know exactly what is going to happen. Because I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, but I think that's also what scares a lot of doctors more specifically from going into it or creating their own thing. Can you say more about that?
Of course. I feel like this whole idea of what it is that we are supposed to do, this societal induced timeline for our personal and professional lives, it's kind of like, the opiate of the masses. It puts you these blinders on. You don't realize that you can step into your full potential in other ways. And I am in no way, shape, or form minimizing the pathways of our colleagues who are finding their calling at the bedside, because that in itself, of course, the difference that they make make with each patient interaction can be tremendous. Even if you're just bringing somebody a sandwich or some clean socks, that can be life-saving depending upon, what your resources are. But I think that one thing that I've told myself is that as long as you have the resources and the skills to always take care of patients or do that sort of thing, then the rest will figure itself out. I think that if you know if you're not willing to compromise your integrity, your goals, and the pillars that really drive and shape your career, then you are going to be just fine. So for instance, I've slowly started, stepping back clinically, and if you told me that a couple of years ago, oh my God, but your time is one of the resources where, it is a limited resource, and you never know how much time is in, your that time piggy bank. Money, you have an idea of how much you have or how you can get it back, but time waits for no man or woman. It is, the most limited asset that we have, valuable asset that we have. You're never getting it back, and you never know when your time is up. And I don't say that to be morbid or macabre, but I think that we need to understand that, in some cases, and I realize that everybody, situation is different. I realize I'm coming from a place of privilege. I'm relatively sound mind, depending upon who you ask, able-bodied individual. So that gives me a lot of opportunity to pivot and move and travel in certain ways. But I think that knowing that your time is just as valuable, if not more so, than your money in certain cases, then that gives you the opportunity to step back, maybe work a little bit less clinically, and pour into yourself. Particularly, Black women, we are expected to pour into others so much. And not too long ago, the other day, actually, I was scrolling through Instagram. I'm sure I was supposed to be doing something else, neither here nor there, but I'm scrolling through Instagram, and this gentleman, I believe I won't make assumptions about his ethnicity. I believe he was Indian, was talking about how his mother always told him that, Black women will take care of you. And if you're ever in trouble to, seek out a Black woman, they'll always be there for you. And he talked very lovingly about the ways in which the Black women in his lives have built him up. But let me tell you something. The comment sections did exactly what they were supposed to. We Black women, we are saying, wait a minute, we're not your mammies, we're not your mules, and even the gentleman in the video, he referenced, Malcolm X saying, we're the most unloved and most unprotected. And for the first time, we are saying, what, I'm not okay with being your mammy and your savior. Every 4 years, we're supposed to save democracy, the Black community, world, all of humanity. And for so many years, we have been doing that. But who is pouring into us? Who is saving us? So that's when I think that, rest and self-care are just these radical forms of resistance. I mentioned earlier when we were chatting, I said, girl, I have slept for 12 hours a night for the last 4 nights, and it is life-changing. I feel this is so basic. We're oh my God, when I eat and take care of myself, I feel better. What? Who would have thought? Who would have actually thought? That's a thing. I said, this is wild. And maybe I don't need that blepharoplasty after all. I just need a few nights. I just needed a few nights of sleep. I feel better. And, I say, and we tell ourselves that, you have to, we're socialized to believe that, you have to earn a rest, and what have you done? And I'm sure we have all just sat around and say on a weekday or a weekend, Netflixing and chilling, but this existential dread of all of the things that I should and could be doing right now. But pouring into yourself and giving yourself the opportunity to explore what matters to you, what is the best way to invest your time and your bandwidth, because the takers, they're going to keep taking and taking. so the givers,
that's what they do.
We have to set, you have to set a boundary. Another meme of mine is people you say you're that you're a people pleaser. Name 3 people who you please. It's not about you're not a people pleaser. You lack boundaries and self-care, and I realize that can come from a place of trauma. It can come from so many things. So I'm somewhat saying this in jest, but I think that regardless of what our experiences have been, you need to take a moment to pour into yourself, to take care of yourself, so that you have the time to sit back and say, well, what are my talents? What are my what's my lens? How am I going to focus my personal life and my professional life? Because I tell my residents, I said, you know what, if I would drop dead right now at the beginning of this shift, you want to know what happened? Within an hour, there would be an email to the community, oh my goodness, we mourn the loss of Dr. Gipson, et cetera, et cetera. But
and a job posting.
Right, there would be a job posting, they'd activate call, and we keep it pushing. The show must go on. So value yourself, your personal life, your family, and your friends. And for me, I feel like I'm almost maybe like principled to a fault. I try not to be like self-righteous or anything about it, because it's just like draining, but I feel things very deeply, and I'm just like, it can be very draining. So you need to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, that you are in workspaces and personal spaces that pour into you, that protect you, and that there's reciprocity. And I realize for many folks that's limited by demographics, resources, etc. But if you don't have to do something, say no, or else you'll say yes resentfully, right?
Right. And no is my favorite word. I want to double tap on so many different things you said, Katrina, because you said so many different things. I guess I'll tap more specifically on the one that's like right there in front of me, as far as the boundaries first, and understanding and listening to yourself first. I think that's also something I'm seeing, not just, of course, being a Black woman, but just out in just medicine and in the entrepreneurial space in general. I think when people think about starting their own business, it gets really overwhelming, and they get overwhelmed by all the things that they have to do. But you need to have the time to actually, like you said, listen and to take care of yourself, so that you can then assess, okay, what am I good at? What are some of the skills that are coming toward or are naturally gifted to me? And how can I possibly take those and use them in such a different way? I love that you parlayed your speaking and your writing into your podcast, because that is just, of course, a natural next best step for you. Why not have your own stage per se and be always speaking on it, because these are the things that you're always passionate about. But of course, someone that's listening that are like, okay, well, what could I do to make money outside of the hospital? What can I do to make money outside of medicine? One of the biggest things that I always tell people to do is stop and take an inventory of what's going on with your life. Take a pause, look around, take a breath. When's the last time you actually took a breath and you were conscious about your energy in that moment? I think that was so powerful about what you said about, like I said, just the boundaries. And you're not a people pleaser, you just lack the boundaries. And honestly, it sounds like people even lack the time to even hearing, and this is what I'm seeing, hearing their own voice and then listening to it, following their own voice, knowing how to trust it. But that comes again with spending time with yourself, taking care of yourself, saying no to the things that are not absolutely mandatory. And of course, we are speaking from some level of privilege. We're both, not married. We don't have children, things like that. So it's like, yes, there's other things that will take up other people's time, but still, at the end of the day, whether you're a mother, you're a father, you're an aunt, you're a sister, you're you first. And so I feel like physicians, Black women physicians, because I'm going to speak about myself. Of course. We're always the one that's giving, like you said, they're going to ask us for the blanket. They're going to ask us to spend extra time. Can you explain this more? Wow, this is the best anyone has ever explained this to me. Right. And they want more and more and more of that. But I love, like you said as well, too, I'm glad the comment section in that post that you read referred back to, no, we're not your mules. We're not your mammies. We're not here to take care of the whole entire world. We have our own dreams and our own visions and things that we're also producing. But at the same time, that's also our superpower. That clearly the world knows that, is that we do what we do and we do it very well. So I just wanted to double tap on about what you said about self-care and boundaries. I think that's, it's become okay, take care of myself, like, okay, boundaries. But it's like, it's becoming almost like a non-negotiable, I think, as older we get. What are your thoughts about that?
No, I think you made so many valid points. For instance, this trope, and I wrote about this recently. This strong black woman trope was meant to serve everyone but us. We have to say yes. We have to, as a black woman, particularly in professional spaces and other minoritized groups, our professionalism is judged and based upon the extent to which we are willing to take disrespect. How much we're willing to, how strong we're willing to be, how the extent to which we're willing to lessen or completely, let go of our boundaries for the purposes of serving others. So It reminds me of one of my one of my favorite pieces. I think that resonated with a lot of us was "Black Women Don't Owe You Likability" in the Emancipator section of the Boston Globe. And I think that particularly women in general, but also Black women, we can't afford to not be, likable. You see a lot of us now are coming to speak out about, we at work and professional spaces, we're not allowed to be introverted because we have an attitude. We're not allowed to be subdued. We're supposed to always be, shucking and jiving and telling jokes and feeling whatever black girl stereotype it is that makes you comfortable. Every time that I have spoken up about some sort of gender or race-based, microaggression about me, someone has made a comment about how someone was made to feel uncomfortable when I was correcting them. Now let's unpack that for a minute. So wait a minute. So we're going to prioritize the level of comfort and or discomfort of the individual who committed the microaggression against me. Not once did anyone say, Katrina, are you okay? How did you feel about that? And me being me, these are conversations that we're saying. So I said, you know what? Minoritized individuals, it is not our job to educate you, to comfort you, to make sure, my professionalism is not going to be based upon the extent to which I take this disrespect. So, my job is not to make you comfortable. And if you are growing and you're doing the right things, then you should feel uncomfortable. So if you want to change, if you want to grow, you do better. You're not that type of growth does not take place in your comfort zone. But
no, ma'am. No, it does not. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I feel like there should be like a virtual offering plate that just comes up at the screen.
And it's just like this, audacity is at an all-time high. But I'm thinking of the last several years, and I do, and I talk to my learners about this as well. You don't have to respond to every single microaggression because it's draining you, or if you choose to do so, make sure you do it in such a way that doesn't take from your cup. But I'm a work in progress. Maybe the way I respond to something, at 11 p.m. towards the end of my shift versus at noon might be a little bit different. However, any response whatsoever that makes the oppressor feel uncomfortable, we're clutching our proverbial pearls, right? And I said, that is no. I said, I will not be disrespected in this hospital on any day of the week that ends in Y. I will stick up for myself, my learners, and if you want to perpetuate verbally this culture of DEI and inclusivity, then the folks who are in the majority need to be willing to do the work. Okay, they need to be willing to be educated, but not expect for us to do all of the education. Right? It takes work. But one of the things that as we were talking about and somewhat in jest is, and I don't even necessarily liken it to carrying myself as, with the confidence of a mediocre white man, because we want to talk about the confidence that is earned, that is deserved, that is intrinsic to us. And I'm really not worried about people liking me, because think about it, like, how many times would a man say, oh my God, I hope he doesn't think I'm mean or upset or angry with him? And of course, some men do. I'm realizing that I'm making some generalizations. However, we are just socialized to be likable. And sometimes it's for self-preservation. Listen, we got bills to pay. I like nice things. I need this job. But at the same time, we are forced to maneuver in ways. When I say we, I'm specifically talking about Black women. We are forced to maneuver in ways that make people feel comfortable with the negative treatment that we receive. And it's not our job. It's not our job to save you. It's not our job to, be your mammy, to educate you. We can talk to you and engage with you in ways about how to be an ally, but an ally is a verb. It is a term that is bestowed upon you by the vulnerable group and or minoritized group in question. It's something that is earned. You can't show up and say, I am an ally. I like those little, stickers on your badges and everything like that. The black fists and the rainbows. Those are cute. I love them. I have them on my badge as well. But if it's a community for which you are attempting to gain allyship with, it is a term that is bestowed upon you. It's a way of life. It's a way of speaking. It's a way of being an upstander. It is all of these things. And those are the things that are going to that increase self-preservation and longevity for the minoritized groups. We can't be expected to do all of the work, all of the education, to take the punch to the cheek and turn the other cheek. And I'm not Jesus. I'm trying to be. I'm a Christian. I'm trying to be God-like. But the point that I'm making is that the onus is not on the minoritized group. To always be doing the work and to always be expected to grin and bear. So that's where boundaries come in mind. Does this serve me? Am I compromising my integrity, my peace of mind? And also, and I realize once again that to be able to speak up for yourself is there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with that. So I am acknowledging that. So I'm not saying, you go to your boss tomorrow and say, I realize everybody's circumstances are different. But if you are in a space where you're made to feel as if you're always having to give of yourself, to compromise your, integrity and your response, and this is abuse. And we, if you're, into abuse. Therapy and talk about therapy, it's the manipulators, is punishing you for your rightful and justified, anger. Because that's one thing that people, particularly Black women, we are not allowed to be angry, because when you're angry, you start to seek change. Okay. And we're not allowed. That's what Black women, we're not allowed to be angry. Everyone else can be angry. It doesn't matter how justified it is, but we particularly are not allowed to be angry. We are not allowed to have boundaries. We're not allowed to have standards. We're not allowed to move in any way, shape, or form that is not consistent with the stereotypes that makes other folks comfortable with our existence.
That is so true. That is so true. When you said that is the one emotion that we are not allowed to feel is anger. And you're right, because things do change. When a Black woman gets mad, let me tell you, I guess as a sidebar to what you're saying, and then also what I know to be true. Mm-hmm. I started my businesses when I was pissed the fuck off with medicine. Like, I'm sick of this place. This is toxic. How can I create something different? What needs to change? And then when I started creating that, then I felt like a world better. When I started my Sherwood Properties and grew that business to 6 figures, when I started business coaching and grew that to 6 figures as well too, that when you start getting mad, that's when you start getting clear. Like, my values are being violated here. Something about my boundaries, like you say, are being violated here. So it's like, I don't need to change. Something else needs to change around me, because I know I'm good. I know that I'm good. So once you said that, I just wanted to just double tap on that. Like, when Black women, and I think everybody needs to embrace anger, but I think when Black women more specifically embrace anger and being angry in a very targeted and directed way, that's exactly when change happens, and usually from the better, because we are not destructive people. We are not out here trying to wish ill on everybody. We want to mind our own business and grow our own businesses and drink our water and flourish. But at the same time, when, like I said, when we embrace that emotion and actually allow ourselves to feel it, that is, like I said, a catalyst for everything that's been, like I said, life-changing for me, at least recently.
Right. So and also when we show up in spaces, when we are not intimidated, when we do not shrink ourselves, when we are not meek, when we do not respond in ways that make people feel comfortable with the disrespect, then they don't like that. They do not like that. So I'm very blessed. Like I said, I keep, acknowledging this because I realize that even, the way that I'm able to kind of make moves now might be a little bit different than, say, when I was a resident, which was different than when I was a medical student, which means that it is important that you have, mentors and sponsors, people who are willing to look out for you. I tell my, learners, if you, not everybody is extroverted and outspoken and and I understand that, and you don't, maybe that's just not your calling. Maybe you are stick up for yourself and move the needle in other ways. But for me, I'm one of those people. I'm like, just like perseverating over something that was said like 20 years. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I'd stuck up for myself. Same. Yeah. Or if someone says something wild to you in the moment, if particularly, and if there is like a power differential, what did you mean when you said that? I encourage people to, rehearse what you're going to say, because don't allow anyone to step out of character, because even if they're wrong, we know what it is. It's going to be, the situation's going to be, manipulated if you acted in a way that, made folks uncomfortable, or, that kind of shakes up the status quo. So if, maybe if you need to practice in the mirror, do that. if you need to just say, hey, well, what made you say that? Or do you need to reach out to a mentor, a friend, and address the situation within 48 hours? Because we all know, please don't send any emails or text messages when you are angry. Because and when you do send professional emails, I write them as if the entire department, community, or company would see them, because anything that you put out there is forever and for everybody's eyes. But it's just this the extent to which the intersectionality of all of our identities, our Blackness, our womanhood, whether it be your ethnicity, your religion, these are all things that can, not only can be used against you, can be weaponized against you. There are sources of pride, there are sources of identity, but they are, of course, also, sources of a lot of the backlash that we may experience in the workplace. And I think that, scholars are starting to explore now that this term, professionalism is a way to police, minoritized individuals to conform to the workplace in a way that makes the oppressors, whether that be the system, individuals, or some combination of all of the above, makes them feel comfortable and not threatened. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to shake things up a little bit, right?
Yeah, I'm here to shake up some shit. I'm not here to color in the lines anymore. Speaking of that, I wanted to go back to one of your passions that I know you have, and of course you talked a little bit about it since we've been talking, is about your writing. So how did you, well, first of all, I related to that so much because when I was growing up, I was a reader. Like, I grew up an only child. The library was one of the only places my mom used to let me walk to by myself. And so I would always have like books everywhere in my bed. And I'm just so much of a reader. But I think grad school and medical school kind of snatched reading, the love of reading as much for a while away. Until, like I said, now I'm finished with residency. I can go back to reading things other than you know, just medicine and things like that. So saying all that to say, writing is something that's naturally come to me as well, too. I've written a book really for patients as well, too. But I guess I'm just curious about what got you passionate about writing, and how were you able to parlay that into what you've been able to do? Because you've written for the Boston Globe, you've written for The Hill, you've written for so many different types of publications. So I guess talk to us about where that love comes from.
Sure. I think I'm like you. I started writing when I was a little girl. I mess around. I'm like, when I was younger, I used to be smart and interesting and read and all this sort of stuff.
I was real smart. I was very interesting.
I used to could do a lot of things, right? So I started writing, and I was like, oh, I used to want to be a writer when I was growing up, but then it's just kind of like, oh, that's not a safe choice. That's kind of like what was instilled in me. All right, well, I'll do something else. But then I was like, wait a minute. I can still be a writer. And it sounds so funny that it's like, here I am, a grown ass woman. And I was like, oh my God, this is something that I can do again. And I think it came into my life at the right time, because this was, as I mentioned, December 2022 is when I started doing the fellowship, but I've been writing. I used to write little short stories as a kid, and if we were doing a group project or something, I'm like, all right, y'all get the materials together, and I will write it up. I'll put it together, and make it sound okay. So it's like I don't, people like let me do it,
right? Because like y'all ain't gonna write it right. Yeah,
I'm like I don't like how that sounds. So I'm sorry, y'all, but I was that kid in the group. Me too. You're like, let my group members be my pallbearers. They're gonna let me down one last time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I've always enjoyed writing, and I didn't think that it was something that I could do again, with the exception of I'm writing some peer-reviewed article that no one's gonna read, including myself, right? But this really stepped back, and I was like, oh, this is something that I like, and that is something that I'm good at, and that is something that I can utilize to bring attention to the things that I attempt to advocate for when it comes to medicine. It's like, right. And then, you're watching TV, particularly, I think once again, the pandemic, you see all these people writing, these experts. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you more of an expert with her? Like, wait a minute, I went to school with this person. You know what I mean? So I think that we are just very much conditioned, socialized, and some of us, we do to ourselves as well. It's like it's difficult to step out of your comfort zone because, we're these type A perfectionists. And it's like, well, I don't want to do something that I'm not good at. It like, what would happen? Like, you know what? Nothing would happen. You can actually do things that you're not good at. You can do things that you enjoy that you maybe don't make money at. Like these are all possibilities. So I started writing with this with the fellowship, and the things that they really emphasize, the fact is, like, if you were to read an op-ed, and I know we don't online, or if you were just watching whatever your news channel choice is, you don't see diversity. It's mostly white men, and you definitely aren't seeing black women. And it's just like, I think that we don't give ourselves enough credit. Like, I've lived a very unique life. My lived experiences are valid. I've done the training. I've read the books. I've done the work. And it's like, wait a minute. I am an expert in these things. And I think a lot of things that people attempt, the status quo attempts to minimize the lived experiences of women and other minoritized groups, but your lived experiences are valid. Like, I don't want to hear that, you spent, the summer in West Africa, and, those types. And so you're going to tell me more about my culture, my lived experiences. And of course, the DEI needs allies. We need folks from, non-minoritized backgrounds as well. But don't ever let anyone tell you that your lived experiences are not part of the things that build to and or contribute to your expertise. So
I'm sorry. I have got to pause right there. Listener, if you did not hear what she just said, rewind for about 2 minutes right, and listen back to that again. I hear so many people that the reason why I'm double tapping on this, Katrina, is I hear so many doctors, and I talk to so many doctors that don't know what they would do as far as a business is concerned. I don't have any talent. I'm not good at anything. No, none of that is true. I love the fact that you went back to what you were good at. And you know what? Like, I really enjoyed writing. That's exactly what you say. You were really good at writing. You've always been the writer. You've willingly taken on that role to write. And so I say that to say, because that's how I kind of started my whole entrepreneurial journey, is like, well, what did I used to enjoy doing?
Right.
And that I was
before
kind
it sucked out of you.
Right. Before I got sucked. Exactly. Before it got brainwashed out of me for 10 plus years trying to go through medicine. But I love the fact that you embraced what you were naturally good at and what you naturally enjoyed. And not that you were necessarily trying to make money off of it right away, but you were literally just using it as a way to share information, as a way to give back to others in other in unique ways. So I'm really glad that you said, like I said, that you went back to your writing and you went back to what you're good at, and your lived experience is valuable in and of itself. Like, people think that they need degrees, certifications, trainings, timestamps, all of these little things to prove that they are an expert. No, if you have overcome something, then you're an expert in that.
Right.
And I love the fact that you said that out of your mouth. That is something that I'm always preaching to people and saying to people, if you've done it for yourself, or if you've already helped people to do that, then that's your expertise. And believing in that and believing in yourself, and that part is just, like I said, super important, not just for entrepreneurship, not just to make money, but just to have a better level of self-concept about yourself. Why not believe that you're good at something? Why not believe that you're an expert at something else? Even if it's an expert at changing a diaper in 30 seconds flat.
Right.
Somebody finds value. That's a skill.
That is a valued skill. Yes.
That's a valued skill. So I had to stop and to pause and to just say, you know what, I was good at writing. And you went back to that. And so say more, I guess, about how your journey has been as far as when you picked back up your writing again as a fellowship or as a fellow, and all of the opportunities that you've had since you've picked back up your writing.
So the other thing that I want to say as we segue into this is it also has pushed me to promote myself. I think that I was like raised in a way to kind of like practice humility and to not really like sing your own praises. But when you're promoting your writing and pitching your work, you have to sell yourself. So and it put me in a place where like, who am I to not be my biggest cheerleader, to minimize my accomplishments in any way, shape, or form. So you start writing, you're reaching out to folks about like, hey, I think that this is in alignment with your publication, and people start reading this work and like, oh, hey, will you come and speak on this panel, or will you come and be on this podcast, on this radio show? Will you be our keynote speaker for this? And it's just like, oh, okay. So this is how this works, because I used to be like, well, how do, like, full transparency, when I was a little kid, like my dad and I, we used to watch MSNBC all the time, the History Channel. We'd watch like Rachel Maddow together. Now I'm like, oh, like that's what I want to do. But it's like, how do you get there? And one of the things that they're doing is, kind of looking at the resumes and CVs of folks that are doing the things you want to do. But I think one of the most important parts is you need to establish yourself as an expert. And I say, I was like being a health equity thought leader is kind of like being like an Olympic hopeful. You can just can say that you are one, but you better write like there's no registry that you check into. But in all seriousness, no, it's one of the ways that you establish yourself. Like we have the training, we have the education, I've done the research, and we had the lived experiences. So of course, I'm often writing about what my experiences are as a Black female physician and what that looks like, or also greatest importance, or people who look like us who maybe aren't in the medical field or don't have family or friends who are directly in the medical field to advocate for them. Right. This is what your experiences may be when you are seeking health care. Your feelings are valid. If you're not feeling heard or understood, this is what you should do, or this is how these policies are going to directly affect the diversity pipeline for healthcare professionals. These are things that, with which we are uniquely familiar. This is what I live and breathe. So who other than me or folks who are doing the things that we are doing than to speak about it? And why is someone who probably has never stepped foot in a hospital, making laws, legislation about reproductive rights in healthcare, or why are insurance companies, deciding like whether or not my patient is eligible for this medication that I just said that they needed? I mean, right. These types of policies impact every aspect of our personal life, of our professional life. So I just started, writing about the things that I know best, my lived experiences. And the other obstacle, though, and I'm still, working with that too, is just making sure that your work and your writing gets in front of the right people. And I think one thing that I would like to share with your viewers, because we're talking about our lived experiences as Black women, where even if you are outgoing and willing to kind of rattle things up a little bit, it can be hard to advocate for yourself. It's like, and I struggle with this day, like, oh my, even something as simple as like sharing an article that I've written. I'm like, oh, I don't want to, all of a sudden I become meager. Like, I don't want to bother you. If you could just like, I don't know how this is going to be perceived. Like, no, I put time and effort into this. I think that this would resonate with you or your viewers, your listeners, your patients, your network, so I definitely encourage women, Black women, minoritized groups, like to step into your expertise, to validate your lived experiences. And I think that invalidating lived experiences has been a way that the status quo has attempted to gatekeep. We talk about there's so many ways that we measure intelligence, and one of those ways is, of course, written word and spoken word. And like, we all have our biases, like, oh, maybe if your dialect or you're speaking in a certain way, maybe people are going to question your intelligence. So there's all these types of strict ways in which we define expertise, intelligence, and all those sort of things within our society. And a lot of that was done for the purposes of keeping certain folks out of the rooms and away from the tables where decisions are being made. So, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We all know that. So right. Don't let, so, and of course, as someone who has spent a lot of money on formal education, it is important, to something, I'm not sitting here telling you that I'm like self-taught and living in a hut by the beach or anything like that. It's clearly not the case. But I think that my lived experiences highlight, the formal education, teaching, and training were always a work in process. But those experiences are what makes me who I am. It's what adds that additional lens through which, I'm sharing my thoughts and my experiences. And don't ever let anybody tell you that is less important than a degree or a certificate or a pedigree, whatever the case may be.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Let's talk a little bit before we have to go about your podcast. So share with us a little bit more in details. I understand having a baby podcast. This is a baby podcast as well too. So having 4 episodes out. So share with us a little bit more about your podcast. Give us the title again, and what can listeners expect? Who is it for, and what can we expect from your podcast?
Yes. So the podcast is called Culture Shock Therapy, Your Health Equity Prescription. It is available on all podcast platforms. And it's so funny. My friend and I, who's producing it, is just like, oh, we're sharing these memes back and forth, like, that's what the world needs, is another podcast. I was like, I don't know, Jimmy, like, what do you think? Like, what should we do? And he's like, yeah, but and I said something to the effect of like, okay, everybody else is like already doing this. And he said, well, are they? And even if they were, do they have your unique spin on it? And one thing that I reminded myself is, if you were to go into the grocery store, right, and you were to go to the bread aisle, you would see dozens of different brands of bread. There's, what is that, Killer Mike's bread, and there's Wonder Bread, and no one said, you know what? Wonder Bread's got the game on lock. We may as well not even try. There's space for everyone. And anyone who knows me, I've been running my mouth probably since I was like 4 years old. I'm working on toning that down a little bit, quality over quantity. But I enjoy talking. I'll talk to anybody about anything for any reason, which is probably not. I love a good debate and verbal spar. But the podcast is for anyone who is in the healthcare field or anyone who is going to be a recipient of healthcare. So it is literally for anyone who wants to understand health inequities. How do they come about? I think that we don't always have the opportunity to kind of sit back and think about how does pop culture, how do policies, particularly if you're like, I'm not a policy person, I don't want to get involved with how the sausage is made, attempt to deliver facts, statistics. I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I like numbers, so this isn't just me talking out of the side of my neck, well, for the most part, right? So I try to really equip people with facts and resources about how they can educate themselves about, pop culture and and how legislation impacts folks. We've alluded to, reproductive rights multiple times on over the last hour or so. And, abortion, for instance, is healthcare. And if you can't name at least 3 different types of abortion, septic abortion, inevitable abortion, missed abortion, then you should not be writing legislation that impacts how persons of childbearing age receive health care from their physicians. And it's just a talking point. It's a divisive talking point when right-wing Republicans could not rally around segregation. Now we're pro-life, but we also just murdered an innocent man in Missouri. But that's fodder for a whole nother podcast. But so I just talk about how all of these things that are relevant in the news, what the healthcare aspect of it is. For instance, we're going to be talking, I have an episode coming out talking about, femicide with the recent killing of, Ugandan runner, Chip the guy. Exactly. And, these are issues that, we think about. These are things that are happening in faraway places that don't impact us. However, I make the argument that, if this was, a man, regardless of his ethnicity, is something that we would be talking about in our community. And femicide is a global issue. It's a local issue. And I talk about how violence, against women, it impacts us all, and the laws and policies, and how you can use your voice to make sure that we are addressing femicide. Why does it take place? What types of music are we listening to that dehumanizes women? What types of policies are being supported that strip women of their bodily autonomy? We talk about all types of things. I think it's just really relevant to show how all of the information that we consume, whether it be in the form of pop culture and politics, has an impact on the health inequities. And we always talk about how your zip code can determine your health outcomes more so than your medication that your doctors have prescribed. So I think that it's really important to kind of sit down and think about how all these aspects of our culture impact the policies at the federal level and the state level and local level that lead to health inequities that disproportionately impact women, people of color, certain ethnicities, the LGBTQI plus community, and so that we can not only take this information and say, oh my God, this is terrible, but it is, but also this is what I can do about it, or these are the resources that I can go to empower myself or my mother or my grandma when she goes to the doctors and I'm not going to be able to be there. Or, this is how I know how my local representatives are voting. And I don't support that, or that bill doesn't mean what I think it meant. Or, oh shit, I got to register before I vote. Like all of the things that all of the steps that we take, the information that we must consume, so that we can be informed patients, informed citizens, and start chipping away at all of those obstacles to health equity.
I absolutely love it. And yes, listeners, if you are frantically searching on Apple Podcasts or whatever you're listening to this one, we will have a link to Dr. Gipson's podcast in the show notes, so you can just hop on over to her podcast and make sure that you like and subscribe, and you can
give that 5 stars
and give a 5-star review.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes.
And just I guess a question for you as an entrepreneurial side. So, of course, and we were talking about this before we got on, is podcast is a whole business journey that most people do not understand that it is.
Yes.
And so, especially an entrepreneurial business journey, because of course you're creating something of your own. So tell me, has there been anything surprising about starting your own podcast? What has been the biggest lesson or the biggest takeaway that you've learned since you've launched and started going with the podcast so far?
Sure. So I am very much, in it's very much in its infancy. I'm not on your level yet, but I think that one thing is things that I have learned is you need to get to that 10 episode mark. That's kind of like the make or break art. You need to be invested. You need to kind of think about not necessarily like a theme, but make sure once again it's kind of talking about, just like when you want to find that guiding lens for your career, what is the impact? What is the outcome that you expect to have from your podcast? Maybe that outcome is income. There's nothing wrong with that, But also, and so I think that, and the other thing is that people don't realize how much work it takes to put together, even just a 20-minute digestible clip, because, you want to be informative, you want to be, educational, and you want to be accurate as well. So it's also, what we call a little bit of edutainment as well. Make sure, you're checking your facts and you're getting your statistics and you're up to date on the news. So it's almost, like you are doing research, just like you would do research for, a peer-reviewed journal. And as you do research to put together, your podcast, like when should it be released, what platform. So I'm very blessed to have someone that is kind of helping me on that journey, and we're thinking about the individuals with whom we want to align and interview to kind of broaden our base, who we want to be when you think about culture shock therapy, and it's also, I think, it's teaching me to be patient. These types of endeavors are labors of love. Things do not happen overnight, and don't compare your journey to anyone else's, because it seems like, oh my God, they just got started and their shows have been picked up and they're doing A, B, and C. But people only post and share their highlights, right? You don't know how long they've been in the trenches, and you just really need to stay focused, because comparison is the death of joy. You all know that, right? Like if you're ever in a bad mood, it's like, hey, let me get on social media and doom scroll and compare my rough draft to everybody else's, finished, filtered product. And I think that can really, be problematic for us all. And I think the other thing is, if you find out that you're doing something that doesn't work, pivot. There's that saying that's like, if you get onto a train and you realize you're going in the wrong direction, the sooner you get off, right, the less time and money it's going to take for you to turn around and go in the right direction. Because a lot of times we think of abandoning a failing plan as failure or quitting, and winners never quit and quitters never win, but they do pivot, right? They realize that what they are doing is not working, and then you have to have the humility and the patience to say, what, this train is going in the wrong direction. Okay. We've all done that. Like, I remember in DC, like, oh shit, I think I'm going to the airport. I'm not going to the airport today. So you got to get off the train, right? Unless you're just going to buy a ticket and fly and make things worse and go even further in the wrong direction. You get off the train, the bus, the whatever, and you turn around and you pivot and you start going in the right direction. And I mean, who knows, you might get a flat tire on the way. You're going to run out of gas. There's going to be obstacles, but, I'm priding myself on trying to be resilient and opening to change and asking for help, because we as Black women, we never ask for help. But I can say, like, oh, this is not my area of expertise, but I know folks who have been doing this, and I'm going to trust their judgment in certain aspects, and which is like, oh my God, it's like relinquishing a certain aspect of power and or control, right? But it's like, this is not my expertise. So I'm going to ask you for help, or tell me, kind of point me in the ways in which I can, educate and learn about myself. So this is very much, in its infancy stages. It's a work in progress. It's a labor of love, but it's just one of the things that I am doing again there. It's like, this is not, part of that set path that we think that we're supposed to take, but it's something that I care about. It's something that I am passionate about. And you have to have a little bit of faith, and just say, oh, this can be something. And, as opposed to saying, there's already too many bread makers. No one's going to want my bread. Someone's going to want your bread because it's your bread, and it has its own unique packaging. It's got its own little extra seasoning or yeast or whatever. I don't know. I've only made bread once, but you know what I'm talking about. Right?
During the pandemic, I'm sure you were making sourdough like everybody else was.
Made some bread once, but everybody's bread is a little different, and everyone, there's room in the grocery store on the shelf for your bread.
So good. This is basically a coaching session, y'all. This is a free coaching session, because these are so many different little gems and nuggets that I know that I needed to be reminded of along just my journey of life. Not even, like I said, just an entrepreneurial journey, but just a journey being a Black woman, just out here just trying to make it. So Dr. Katrina Gipson, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations again on culture shock therapy. This is amazing. I'm so excited to continue to watch you. Hopefully not from as afar that has been.
Right,
like I said, we've been in the same circles and things like that. But
yes, we need to link in person. Yes,
yes, and we were supposed to link it in May, but I flaked out on you guys because I had a talk at 8:00 in the morning the next day. I'm like, Sam, I don't know why you could go to the club and then go and give a talk at like 9:00 in the morning in New York. But anyways, yes, no, we will link in person. But like I said, thank you so much for your time, your energy. Your work is so impactful. And there's so many of us that are watching you secretly that may not have said anything to you, but we see you, we hear your voice. And more specifically, thank you for continuing to show up authentically as yourself. We need to hear more of you and hear more of your thoughts and your opinions out there in the world. So again, thank you for showing up for yourself continuously, and again, thank you for sharing your voice with my audience today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for lending me your platform. Thank you for your work, your camaraderie, and I look forward to seeing you in person sooner rather than later.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to the Docs Get Money podcast. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you find your favorite podcast. Share, comment, follow, and subscribe to the Docs Get Money podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know more, visit me, Dr. Kimberly Brown, at KimberlyBrownMD.com, and be sure to follow me at Dr. Kimberly B on Instagram. And until next time, let's go get this money, honey.